Okay, hello everyone. Hello Maddie, and today we are going to get Matt a bit quicker into the good stuff, into the hard topics, and leave
Excellent.
our audience and potentially ourselves with some very deep takeaways.
So you're saying less banter?
Saying a bit more like a sprinkling of banter throughout than a controlled onslaught of banter at the start of the show for 45 minutes.
Excellent. I like it. Straight to the insights and straight to the point.
I think, you could probably tell that maybe we've had some feedback from our claws to say less talking. Don't bore us, get to the chorus.
Yep.
But mate, so what I wanted to go through today, and what we're really doing on the show always is distilling the content of our week into how we either leveraged that new information ourselves internally, or the takeaways that we've gotten and distilled into what we're doing at work, and just sharing that, and hopefully that people get some value out of it. So one of the big pieces of content that I chewed up over the last couple of weeks was the 3-hour interview with Elon on the podcast with the guys from Stripe. And what was interesting about it is he basically got asked about all 6 of his mega companies and how he manages to run them. And in physics terms, he spoke about the limiting factor, which is basically, in normal people's terms, just a bottleneck. He just focuses repeatedly on the bottleneck, and every single question he ended the same with, I just go in there, focus on the limiting factor, remove it, and then go on to the next one. And it really reminded me, actually, we're both listening to a lot of the founders podcasts, and where that sort of then ties into this focus thing, this taste and focus thing that we're seeing from, we're hearing about from Steve Jobs, we're hearing about from people like Jensen, like your man James Dyson. And it made me then, I suppose, take a look internally at what I've been focusing on, and whether I'm focusing on things that I enjoy doing, things that I find interesting, or the actual limiting factor of my business. And I suppose before I go too deep on that, what's your experience like this over, call it, the last 6 to 12 months? How do you find, when you analyze your time, about how you manage what you're actually focusing on?
Yeah, I think what's interesting about focusing on the limiting factor is it's saying 2 things. One, it's saying that a founder, CEO is responsible for unblocking things, right? Like when there are issues somewhere, that is a good thing to go and help unblock that issue. And often that is a way of getting velocity in an organization, is to go in and try and unblock stuff. Now, what Elon's saying is he's not going to go and unblock everything. He's only going to go and unblock the biggest problem in each of his businesses. And by virtue of him running 6 multi-billion-dollar businesses, he probably has to do just that. So I guess my experience has been, over the last 12 months, I have gotten better at unblocking people and actually being connected in with more team members and being more across different things, and promoting velocity within our organization, ensuring that we're not getting stuck in red tape or people are spinning their wheels on things. And that's been a net positive. I think the area that I could personally improve in is on focusing on what areas matter more than others. Because I'm across a lot of things now, inherently by doing that, you then become the limiting factor for more things. Like you can become the limiting factor yourself. So maybe I need to go and focus on myself. So I think it's kind of 2 concepts here. There's velocity and unblocking things, and then there's focusing on the right stuff. So yeah, my personal experience is I've gotten better at the velocity, but probably need to be better at the focus.
Yeah, I think there's two things there, and both Elon and Jensen, once again, I think, lead the way, and I've tried to implement it as well. So Elon also gets every engineer at his business to basically send him a one-pager, or he gives them 5 minutes a week to present to him. and he basically just gives them immediate feedback. Jensen does the top 3 email. So give me your top 3 biggest wins and biggest losses. And then he reads 1,500 emails a day, he said. I personally do the very same thing in my business. So everyone in my business wraps up their week and sends it to the whole business. So you've just basically got this news feed of everyone's top 3, bottom 3, and then all their metrics. A little bit of story time sometimes, some celebration of our core values, but it's basically everyone's personal dashboard goes through the whole business. Now, I'm tripping that 90% of the people don't read other people's, but then it allows me to have that impact across the business on my weekend when it suits me. And it just means that if I want to, there's opportunities to just go that more scattered velocity approach, but as opposed to going out and finding it all week. It actually, it's more set up for you as like a T-ball.
Yeah. But it's not just you, Scotty. It's also with AI now, it's the organizational knowledge base as well. Like it's not just you who has to go in. You could have an operational leader come in and say, hey, what have we done over the last 6 months, and get AI to go and analyze that. So I think now more than ever, it's really important to have this communication out in the public. And this is something that we actually started doing probably, I guess, maybe 18 months ago now. We did a couple of things. One, we moved all communication to public channels. So basically banned private direct messages, unless it was genuinely just banter and we didn't, it was going to provide no use to someone else, or it was sensitive information. But outside of that, if anyone sends me a direct message on something that I think could be somewhat relevant to anyone else, I don't even respond to it. I just say, put it in the channel and tag me, right? And because from there, 1, others are going to learn from it. 2, the AI has that context on it. And then finally, like if it's really pressing and I haven't seen that tag in that channel, you can always forward that on to me. So I've got the DM there. I'm like, I've seen it now. I know this is important, and I'll go respond there. And it's about building up the knowledge base across everyone, because that question that you asked me could be relevant to someone else. Neither of us know that. And we're building to the knowledge base. We now have an AI that is looked at every single Slack message that's in the public and has that in its brain. So a lot of the chats now is people tagging our BuildPass AI. What do we do here? What's the situation there? And you actually don't have to write that many SOPs, because the SOPs have been written by conversations and decisions that have been made in the past. And we even took it a step further than just communicating in public. Everyone does a daily update now. It's got a daily updates channel globally. And at the start of the day, you have to go in and say, what's your main focus for the day? And what other things have you got on your plate? Again, other people aren't going to be reading every single message. It's super noisy. But what it does, it keeps you accountable to trying to work on the things that were important at the start of the day, rather than just getting distracted with all these other things. You can get to the end of the day and say, I said I was going to do these 5 things and I didn't even get 1 done. So that's probably, I need to focus on that. But 2, like I can scan the channel. I'm like, wait, why is that person working on that project? That I know that's being covered by a different area of the business, and I can just jump in there in a public area and tag them. So similar to what you're saying about just being able to catch up over the weekend, and with AI, it's even more important to have this out in the open.
Yeah, so you're basically like expanding your neural net internally in real time. You've got employees sort of learning through osmosis themselves, so everyone gets that shared learning. And then I suppose your own company chat is becoming like the system of record, isn't it? It's like your own internal operating system is being built out, as opposed to some other piece of software sort of guarding that. So it's interesting that we're doing the same thing there in 2 completely almost different industries, but businesses with similar headcounts and similar age groups. So I think as well, I do believe that really increases velocity, and I'm seeing it from staff that used to be segregated, like out on site or people in the office. We're seeing this now. What I think we also start creating when we do this is this more generalist employee who they're not fine-tuned to this one little section of the business. And I think in the age of AI, that I'm reading a book about at the moment, that like the generalist sort of wins, because the AI is going to be better at you at any one thing. Like if you're just a coder, it's already got you. Or in my field, if you're just X, you're just this little niche part of the business, there's going to be a robot or a piece of technology that's better at you at that one thing. But if you're a generalist, then you're just leveraging tools because you've got this bandwidth. So I think that's what we're also seeing is I've got these young guys coming to the business, these grads, but they just get involved in all kinds of things and they're building up this general knowledge because they're just seeing it all day. It's like a news feed, but for every part of your business. So,
and tell you what's funny is that the raw intelligence is also being degraded. Like I think hiring smart people is still a good idea. But an interesting thing that's happening, this interesting dynamic with AI is that a lot of intelligent people are not using AI to its full extent because there's some assumption that like AI won't be able to do this or won't be able to do that. And so they don't try. Whereas to some of the most impactful people right now are like the people who are a bit dumber and they just get AI to do things. They have an idea and AI starts doing it. And because it's getting so good, that they're actually having more impact than the smart person who's sort of sitting back there thinking that AI can't do it or thinking about how to optimize something. So I think that sort of just agrees with exactly what you're saying there around fortune is favoring the bold and the people who are curious and are just like trying stuff and are willing to use these tools and are pushing them to the edge rather than, and I think the mentality needs to change from instead of, can AI do this or not? It's like, AI can do it and I'll learn the hard way if it doesn't. Like just get AI to do it. And if the answer is wrong or it doesn't work, then I'll figure it out. But starting from that mentality of just putting the workload onto an agent or onto a model first, flipping the dynamic from going back to doing it yourself, those are becoming some of the really powerful people in organizations.
Yeah, the word you use is curious. I think that's the right word. I think a lot of intelligent people who have spent all their time honing one craft, that then comes with ego because it's identity. You've got to protect that because that's where you get your value from. It's actually like an archetype. And I think it sort of comes down to be Joe Rogan, don't be his guest. So his guest is that specialist, but that guest should be your AI. That should be your agent. And you're the guy or girl who's curious about everything. And then you just have these bots, but don't be on the other side where you're like, no, I'm the go-to guy for this one thing because, or girl, don't be the go-to.
Yeah.
Or unless you want to be the go-to for agents.
Yeah. But I tell you what's magical though, like on that ego thing, I think someone who's really good at something, once they let the ego go, what AI allows you to do is to essentially build on your skill set. I think we talked about this in a previous episode, actually, where we're talking about my co-founder, Aaron, and what he's doing with building with AI at the moment. The rate that he can build with AI is still 10x what the average Joe can build with AI. Now, the playing field has evened from, say, Aaron being the guy who can build really great software to someone, the average Joe couldn't even get close. Now the average Joe can get to maybe 80% of where Aaron was, but he's just gone from here up to here, and can do all of that 10 times faster. And there's still taste and craft and guiding the AI in the right direction and knowing what's going on behind the scenes. And so and now we're seeing this with some of our other engineers who are really, really good, but were more, I think they were letting ego get in the way of using these tools to the full extent. And they have come around to it as well. They're like, holy, I don't have to do that anymore. I can just tell the agent to do this and move on to the next thing and guide it. So they're getting really good as well. And I think that's also a really dangerous person in an organization, dangerous in a good way. Someone who knows the craft and leverages the tools and is essentially commanding a team now to do the work that they were doing.
100%. It's really interesting. I actually had a staff member play the last one, the most dead against it. I can't name names. Who I reckon did some of their best work in the last 48 hours. And I could see that one of it was clearly AI. So instead of saying something, I said, excellent work. Because it is that they've clearly leveled up. And it was like, and they're super talented, but it was this last sort of horizon. And I could actually see it. And now I'm seeing they've gone, oh, actually, I'm actually already, yes, I am good at this stuff. Now I'm going to leverage that. And now it's like they've gotten better. So yeah, that sort of, I think we're both in agreement there that once you're stuck in on the right side of the tools, you're there. Now, after speaking about being generalist, we're going to come back to limiting factors. Look at you and I. We couldn't even focus for 5 minutes. talk about limiting factors. I think you and I are the limiting factor.
Yeah.
But so there's different types. So if we're talking about it for people for the first time, you can think about it as bottlenecks. For this show, we're going to call it the limiting factor. There's sort of different ways that these constraints can present, right? So one of them, if you're running a business, is in demand. So is the limiting factor of your business the fact that no one wants to use your business, that you don't have demand for your product? Is it authority? So there is demand in your field. However, people are choosing your competition over you because you're not the best authority on what you serve. Is it distribution? So you have a great product, but you just haven't been able to get your product in front of the right people. Is it, even though you're selling, you're not making any money? So is it a margin problem? Is it a cost and efficiency problem? Is it a talent constraint? So you've got people that want to use you. You've got a good product, but you actually just need more people within the business to scale. Is it your systems? You've got a bunch of people creating a bunch of noise internally in the business, but there's no systems for velocity and scale. Is it a capital problem? You've got everything's going well, but you've got no money. You're burning through all your money, so you need some capital. Or the final one, which I think is pretty interesting, is CEO attention, which is what we're sort of talking about today. Is what is your CEO the bottleneck of the business, because every decision runs through them, and all the teams are ready to rock and roll, and he's off drinking wine at a dinner or getting involved in the weeds. So I think it'd be interesting for you and I to do an exercise. I did mine on the weekend, but to actually, I suppose, score ourselves here. I'll go after you where I got to. But when you hear about that list, what at BuildPass do you think is the current limiting factor there? Like, what would you say? Okay, if we could fix one thing, what would it be?
Yeah. If it was one, I would say distribution. We, especially in the US, we're in a new market, got very small distribution channels compared to competitors. Even in Australia, we're quite new compared to sort of legacy players, and we're not a household name yet. Maybe in some markets, if you walk around the streets of Toorak in Melbourne with high-end builders like WBuild, then hopefully you've heard of BuildPass. There's a lot of our signs around. But yeah, we're not household yet. And so I think that's a big one. I'd say as a number two, I'm trying to put it into the categories you put, but I think our number two is actually product itself, and how we want to make it broader and broader. Anyone who signs up to our platform likes using the features that we have, but wants to do more. And so, that category is sort of just like a product depth category, and the things that we need to build out there is essentially people and capital is the main thing. So I guess talent and capital. The CEO attention one is interesting. Like I was saying before, I'm actually spread across a lot of different things at the moment, and I'm giving my attention to lots of different things. So that in itself, I don't think is necessarily the problem, but maybe I'm not focusing on the things that matter the most, and I'm trying to be across everything. So that's the deeper question I need to ask myself. But yeah, to come back to the number one for us, it's distribution.
So then if you reflected on your calendar for this week or last week or next week, how much of your time do you reckon is focused on distribution?
A lot, but only in the US. And I haven't been doing the things that I used to do. So I'll quickly explain. I've been really enabling and working very closely with the US sales team, helping to build the team, helping to do the scripting, how we're going to be selling in the US, building out the internal tools that we're going to use over here. So I've been heavily involved, probably spending 80% of my time doing that. And so that is part of our distribution. But the things that I'm not doing anymore that used to get good distribution was posting on LinkedIn. I would do LinkedIn posts that would get tens of thousands or sometimes hundreds of thousands of impressions, and we get organic inbound leads coming from that. And I haven't done a LinkedIn post in 2 months, just because that's fallen off the radar. So I think that if I had done a proper time audit on, okay, if distribution's our biggest thing in the business, let's think about distribution as a whole, and how can I spread my time across the various different channels that we use and the methods by which we pull levers to get better distribution, we probably could have grown faster.
Yeah, so one of the interesting ones last year, I did a similar theme, because what you mentioned there, you've got 3 to 4, right? You feel like if you go all in on one, you're going to have some big blind spots and some areas that need your attention. So last year, I think just before we started the pod, I did a thing in the business called FebFast, which was we broke the business into 4 critical elements. And then there was 4 weeks in February, and the whole business focused on that one thing for that week. So it was around the first, and we started from the top. So we went like new business. And like we went in, everyone had to buy in, and everyone had to do something about new business. So like the whole business, like whether you were in reception or myself, you had to go do something about new business. And we basically all put on the table what the goal for the week was, and then turn that part of the business up to 11. And the next week it was like for us design, like what's the next bottleneck? It's like design resolution, like basically not being able to procure work because the design's not resolved. And then we went to procurement. So then it was about cutting as many deals as we could downstream with all our contractors and suppliers and just removing that bottleneck. And then it was on site. It was about driving the living hell out of the program and seeing how much you can actually pump into a week of work when the whole business is focused on it. And it was a really interesting point. I think everyone wanted to quit by the end. But the amount of work we got done was phenomenal. Like it was like one of those things you wouldn't do, in tech, they call it a sprint or whatever, right? But it was highly valuable, and it actually got us out of that in Australia, that January fluffy, like it's a wasted month because everyone's coming back from holidays late. There's Australia Day, and it was just a wake up. And then suddenly the year kicked off and went really well. So it is interesting that when you actually do this more open, not just as a business owner to say, I'm just going to focus my time here, but actually focus the business energy on a certain issue. It's amazing what you can, that extra bit of leverage you create, while not leaving things behind, like having a theme for the month, for the week, for the quarter that's public and everyone knows you're going hard on it. And then suddenly if you've got a team that's bought into your mission, then you've now got 20 people with just that side, a bit of attention with a bit of focus.
Yeah. I do like this idea of deep dives, and you've done it at a company level, which is really fascinating. Aaron and I will sometimes do founder deep dives into parts of the business that we're not as across on. Like, okay, how is customer success working? How are we doing sales prospecting? What is our marketing attribution? One, to like get a handle on things. But often I think what it does is by asking the why and the why and the why and the why, you can really get to the root of where problems are and probably unpack things that people didn't realize were problems, or they just like had made assumptions about things that this is the way it has to be. But if you come in with like a founder mindset of, no, we can change anything. Like if you're spending time doing that, why can't we delete that? So I think that's another good thing to do, and probably is, along the topic of having been in the details and unblocking things versus having focus. Maybe that is a way of doing it, like rather than always being across all the different channels. It's like, okay, I'm going to spend a week every quarter in a different function, or a week every month, rotating between just going a deep dive with this leader to understand everything that's happening and try and figure out all of those roadblocks and get rid of them.
Yeah. So what I've done is mine was demand. So really simple. My business wants to do, like, it took away, stripped it back. If someone said, here's 5 new $10 million homes, start them in 4 weeks. Like, that would then create another problem, but it's a good problem to have, if that makes sense. And we're capable of doing it. And then that would then, double our revenue, and it would and our gross margin of the business would double or triple, right? Because it wouldn't require more overhead. So then you go, okay, well, what am I doing? How much of my week am I spending on that? And I realize I'm spending like 10% of my week on the number one thing that could really change the business. So then what I did was just time blocked out, some 3-hour blocks for the week, like got 2 3-hour blocks to bookend the week, and just built a product basically to bring in more customers in that niche. So we basically put together an offer almost it was too good to refuse around, okay, so what are all the people with that work? Where are they? And what are their biggest problems? What are their biggest headaches that we can actually solve? So we basically packaged up an offer that solves all of their problems for free on the condition that we just get an opportunity to be a part of their tender process or ideally get walked into a project. And then we basically sent that out, like dressed it up, made it pretty, and then we sent that out to all the people that we know of nationally that actually have what we're after. And then we're able to do that in the course of a week. And then, so that was last week. And then suddenly, then this week gets into, now it's booked 3 or 4 meetings that never would have come. And then out of those 4 meetings, it could go anywhere. Like for our point of view, some of these people have five of these things sitting in their hands and they get to choose. So they're like what we'd call like whales type thing, right? So, but suddenly, and then you'll see, and we might get the job in 6 months from now. And then you just never know what that sporadically goes into. But it was just stopping and doing that, and if I had done that 6 months ago, what would I be looking at now? And it was just interesting to sort of like, I've got a guy in here who I like to bring to these things with me because together the two of us are sort of big. It's like sometimes I talk about 2 carpenters can do three people's work. Like together, it's all the skills are in the room and you can actually walk out of it with like a product after a few hours. So I think it's really interesting to take someone with you on that you're like, all right, turn the phones off. This is what we're not leaving this room until we come out of it with something. And then you just get it done. Like I pissed so many people off. I missed like 3 meetings as we kept going, but now we've got a product and that thing's now, that can be sent to anyone in the country. If that makes sense.
I think that is just such a good example of the power of focus. And you're right. You've got to break a few eggs to make the omelet sometimes. And like, I've had similar things where people have been like, why couldn't you respond to this or do that when I've been locking in on something that's important? And it's about that, that compounding over time. Is the work that you're doing now going to compound? And it is also the hardest thing to do, taking yourself out of the day-to-day, the little paper cuts that are happening, like being able to solve them at the time can feel good. It feels like you're making progress. Like I'm keeping on top of my inbox. I'm responding to that person, doing this. But at the same time, if those things aren't the highest impact thing, then what are you doing? So, and in a similar vein, Aaron and I have had the conversation recently around, especially for him, who is a deeply technical guy, is a genius at what he does, and is spending a bunch of time on HR and meetings and one-on-ones and all this stuff. All the while, we're going through a technical revolution. This is like one of the greatest opportunities to be a software company. It's a scary time, but it's the greatest opportunities. And we kind of realized, like, dude, what the are you doing? Like, getting caught up in all of these things. Just because you're a founder doesn't mean that you have to have all of these assumed responsibilities. You're the one that can be spearheading the charge into being the first AI native construction operating system. And since doing that, the progress that he's made into certain areas, that when we sell these products in 3 months' time, we'll look back and go, what was more useful, putting your head down and building that thing on the cutting edge? Or do you regret that you missed a few one-on-ones, or that someone got a bit angry at this person they had a row about and you weren't there to play babysitter on it? Like, and the answer is pretty obvious. So I think, like, hard agree on being able to make the tough call to focus on the really important things. And what I think it requires maybe not being the most slack person. You might be a bit more blunt and direct with people, or brush people off, or not give them the time and attention that they need, which a lot of people do need. But if you're focusing on the most important thing, or the limiting factor in this case, that's going to be the best thing long term.
Yeah, I think one of the things is like delete the requirement. Like the HR, that meetings, that one-on-ones, like just delete them. And if he goes away with you and in 4 hours you guys genuinely move the company forward with your product, like with technology, people are going to want that. That's the best HR there is. That's the best culture, because now people are part of a better company with a better product. and they're drawn to the mission, not to the one-on-one with Aaron. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, that's what's really interesting. Whereas, I find one-on-ones and all that, it's because people aren't inspired. Like, you don't need to sit down and deal with an issue with a guy or girl who's just inspired to come to work every day and is just going home. And then what's going to inspire them? The founders getting together and creating cool shit that they can get behind and sell and build on top of,
Yeah, that reminds me of two things that I'll quickly talk about, then we can get back on track. I have an investor and advisor that I was talking about some HR things with, and I was saying that, hey, like, we're thinking about, whether we need some HR support or like it might be time for like a HR manager. And he's like, or you could just hire people that don't need HR. I was like, that's a really good way of looking at it. And then the other thing, to your point around being inspired and winning, there was a quote from the founder of a company called Legora, a legal tech startup, talking about how hard they work. And he was being questioned on like, aren't you worried that your staff are going to experience burnout? He's like, and he said that he thinks that burnout comes from not winning. Like, if you're working at a company that's not winning, not getting wins regularly, if you're working really hard, yeah, you're going to get burnt out. But if your company is winning and succeeding every week and you're working really hard and you're seeing the reward for that, you're not going to get burnt out. You're going to be motivated by that. You can work 12-hour days for many years straight if you're winning every week. So I think that's another way of thinking about it. And that's hard to always be winning, but if you can be working on the right limiting factor, then hopefully you can avoid those things like burnout.
Yeah, 100%. If you look at a football game, look at the team at the end of the grand final running around with the cup, they're not tired. And look at the team lying on the ground, they're tired. They both played the same sport. But a win will get you through any sort of fatigue. Just quickly before we get on to basically, well, what does that mean in the current news cycle for AI, autonomous agents, OpenClaw? Your mate Tez will go through. But I also applied the lens to my planning filter, to my annual, and basically I got shamed by my bot because I do a lot of education, a lot of international travel, and especially last year and this year. I said, you can have vision and you can try and broaden yourself, but then if the core product's not right, if your core revenue driver's not right, then you're just an explorer with a sinking ship. So big focus, I suppose, on the core business this year. But I still had a couple of trips that I was really interested in doing. And it basically once I built that filter of what's the most like laying out what the most important from 10 to 1 in the business is, it basically said that to me, it sounds like you're going on a learning holiday. And I'm like, oh God, like Jesus Christ. Talk about identity killer. And I'm a bit of explorer, but I'm like, good point. Like, what a distraction. So for someone like me, it was enormously eye-opening, and I canceled 2 trips. What I then talked to the bot about, and the bot came around, was that I can consciously go on those trips knowing what they are now, right? Because there's 52 weeks a year. You need to go and experience things and come back fresh and all that kind of stuff. But I can't do it convincing myself that I'm working on the core issues of the business, that I'm really serving the business. Then I came back and reframed it and went, okay, out of these events I wanted to go to, how could we scrape as much information as we can to basically get the digital experience version and try and still lure the takeaways without being physically present. So if you get 50% or 60% with 1% of the effort, does that make sense? So just a really interesting thing on short-term and then long-term focus. And then once you've got it, you're running a filter through all of your planning just to make sure, just to realign yourself with what the business actually needs from you. So interesting thing there. And then I suppose what we want to convert it now to, because what this show is always about as well, is like what's going on this week, what's going on in the last month, what is the biggest tech news and how do we apply it to this? So sort of wanted to talk about when we're talking about the limiting factor and focus, how are we leveraging AI and what I would now call with agents, just the next step, the additional leverage layer of AI being autonomous agents and OpenClaw, and you can go through some of your experiences this week. But is it something where we go, okay, what's the most important issue? How am I using AI on it? Or is it, what's the most important issue? How am I getting AI to do the lower frequency work so I have the time to focus on to focus my attention here. How do we make sure that tool exploration and leveraging AI is not just something in like founder or tech guy playground, that we are somehow making it work towards the core business goal?
I almost have the opposite, in the sense that I sometimes feel like I'm not exploring enough. And what I mean by that is there's this, what happens when I'm thinking about what to do next or I'm busy? I think the natural human tendency is to revert to what you know. So I've been having to train myself that every time I go to do something, whether it's respond to an email, organize something, do a Google search on something, is stepping back and thinking, like, should I be doing that? Or should someone else be doing that in my team? Or should my AI bot be doing that? Or is there a tool I could find to do that? Or could I try and automate this process? And one, it's the mental thing of stepping back and doing that. It's like, it's a bit mentally challenging to think in a different way, but also it actually takes more time up front. Like your OpenClaw bot that we both have now doesn't have all the context it needs for things. You got to work with it. You got to like invest in the relationship. And so you need to spend a bit more time up front to get repeatability in the tasks. And what I think is really validating is when you get the AI to do something that you would have otherwise done, and it actually gives you like a better response to something. And so just as some examples, I've very much been leaning into, AI as an assistant to do things both personally and professionally. And what I think it requires is, one, leaning into it, like I just said; two, giving it the context it needs, to spending a bit of time to organize stuff and make sure it's pointing it the right direction, and then just trialing it for things. And, as a couple of examples to bring it back down to something concrete, so people know I'm not just talking fluff, like a few things. Finding swimming lessons for Orlando over in the US, to get him back in the pool. Literally just talked a few voice notes to my agent. This is where we live. This is what I'm looking for. This is how old he is. And through that experience of them, Texas Terry, as I call him, or Tezza, is my OpenClaw bot. He's gone out and found where we should take Orlando to swimming lessons, and we got that booked in via him. But the thing that's happened there, Scotty, is my assistant now knows my son's age, where I live, preferences for things, how he communicates. The next task that I got to do, which is another interesting one, is we had to pick him up from daycare because he was sick. And so I'm in the car to pick him up, and I'm talking to Terry, say, hey, he's just vomited. He's been a bit unwell. Like, should we be thinking about taking him to a doctor? And because it already knows where I live, my son's age, it's giving me a great response with all of the context. And so we're leaning into that. And so to your question about, are we just sort of experimenting with things, not actually getting any value? I think there has to be that level of experimentation, because if you're always just trying to optimize for the ROI initially, you might be stuck in an old way of thinking.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, it sort of goes back to even when we were talking about the focus before. When you go away and lock yourself in a room and build that product, you're not being a fireman and tending to the immediate needs. So there's not that short-term dopamine hit that being a fireman is, which is like, what needs to be done right now? It's like very much like it's that delayed gratification, which is like what you're saying about build that repeatability, which I think is quite interesting. In terms of, because the start of these things, the investment is never sexy, is it? Like, it's like you said, like building up context and memory and designing the system is just the most unsexy experience of all time. But then when it clicks, like you feel like Neo in the Matrix. You're like, oh, look, it's quite similar with building a business or something like that. But it's, it comes back to this, I think, like for me, it's this, is this problem novel or is it repeatable? So if you find yourself that you're doing it often and it seems repetitive, it's like, that's the number one, like, let's find a way to palm that off. And that's where we've always had that automate versus elevate, button. So people just check themselves. Am I, with every task, am I doing something that I do every day and it's on repeat? That is like, that's got to go to Tez. Like, Tez, you're on. And if it's truly novel, you're probably like, all right, well, the amount of time it's going to take me to teach Tez this, is probably too long. So some really interesting thing there. What have you got any tips? So you're also talking about building context and memory there. So what are your thoughts on sort of building out repeatability or designing systems or making basically something so it can be delegated? What's an example or some experience that you have in that space?
Yeah, so it's really actually not complicated. In the case of a personal assistant, like with Tez, it's after something happens, it's saying, hey, can you save that to memory, or can you put that in a file, or giving it access to your notes. So I now use a note taker app called Obsidian, which just stores things in text files. And when I put that on my phone, so I'm just like taking a note for something that an idea has popped up, that is then getting synced with my Mac Mini that Terry has access to. So it's just like, one, it's systemizing things to ensure that they've got the right level of access, they know where to look for things, and then, but also instructing it when you think that something's important to remember. It's like, hey, that thing that I just mentioned, like, that's how I want you to respond to things in the future, and instructing it there. When it comes to a business system, I think it's really important to have a shared filed system that interacts with your AI. And so what I mean by that is I've been doing a lot of work recently, working on some projects that are important to the business in Claude Code. And so my Claude Co-work and just Claude chats, a lot of context about the project is building up within that chat, right? So what can you do there to share that knowledge? One thing is you can just get it to say, hey, summarize this whole chat. What are all the key decisions that we made in here? Give me a SOP for this. And then you can then go take that and you can store that somewhere. But what I have been doing is we use Notion as our document management system. That's where we write documents, and just, it's like a Google Docs equivalent. Claude Code is directly connected with that. So what I have been doing is, with this project, I have built and I actually get the inside of Claude Code, I will tell it to write a main document that houses all of the information we've been talking about, and then it injects more documents that are linked into there as we make decisions, as I do something. So, for example, we're running something called Project Annual at the moment, where offering for a lot of our customers to move from monthlies to annuals. And there's actually a lot of that goes into this, like all the systems and the communications around it, the pricing on it, and all these things. And so every time I get to a decision in here, Claude Code is then going to take all that context and it's going to go build in. So, for example, the email sequence that we're sending out to advertise this is now a Notion document, and it goes outside of Claude and it goes into Notion for someone else to then collaborate on. So I think that's really important, is getting context out of your own personal AI, whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's Claude, and getting that into just pure documents and decisions that are made into the shared system for other people to then collaborate on, and then their AI can interact with it as well.
Yeah. So it's just, you're just pumping, you're not letting any context escape the general knowledge base.
Because what happens with AI is there's something called compacting and a context window. So as you're in a chat and the chat's getting longer and longer, it actually drifts away. It can't keep all of that in its memory, right? Like it has to do this thing that compacts the conversation down, so it only takes the key insights from it, and then you can keep talking to it. And that these models now have smart ways of saving things to memory as things happen, but you almost want to have a process of ensuring that you're doing that at a business level, because otherwise things and insights just get lost in certain threads. And yes, if you then go and use your ChatGPT again, it might remember that, but you're not sharing that across your organization. So I think that's something that's a deliberate thing that we need to build into our workflows, is ensuring that the insights that we're developing out of interacting with AI, they're getting fed into the appropriate places such that they're reusable and shareable and they become public knowledge.
Yeah. So you'd always call them artifacts, right? So
Yeah.
we, when I do all my workshopping with, I'm still ChatGPT for all my personal workshopping because it's just got the best memory and stuff like that. I personally tell it to update memory, then I create an artifact and then I send it to my leadership team. Now, unfortunately for them, it's always after hours, and it's always something they have no context about. They're like, what? Like it's thought spam. But
Yep.
once I've sent it to them, it's now with them. It's now in an email. I've now not forgotten it, and now it's in our system. And then by the end, there might be 50 of those a year. But what we've managed to do is compact. How often do you get 4 hours of knowledge, of deep thinking compacted into a one pager? And then you end up with 50 of those over a year. And that's what you're saying is that's the actual best use of the technology at the moment, why it still has a context and memory limiting factor, we might say.
Yeah, I think so. And I think there will be these, you can sign up for a business plan on ChatGPT and things. And I'm sure they'll work on this sharing of context and integrating into file systems. But I think that part of it's just super important at the moment, ahead of us having a full AI operating system to do this, is we still need to have ways of finding information and sharing information. And like I was saying at the start of this call, putting things out into the public, it's the best time ever to be over communicating things, because we can all use AI to summarize stuff for us. And so I really dislike it when people say, in my organization, hey, I didn't tell you this. I didn't want to annoy you. I didn't want to distract you with this, or I thought that this piece of information wouldn't be relevant to anyone. It's put it out in the open. It's up to other people to manage their notifications and what they're focusing on, because that thing you just discovered, even though it doesn't sound like it could be important, that might be something that in 6 months' time, someone joins the business. They really need to know that piece of information, and they're now going and searching or repeating that work. So it's the best time ever to be over communicating, putting things out into the open, because AI is really, really good at helping us find that information and in condensing insights based on the actions that have been taken.
Yeah. So, and then I suppose the AI is then really good at, and what we're talking about here is this signal versus noise thing, is AI can sort of turn noise in your business into signal and into takeaways. It's so we've spoken about it now at sort of CEO level about, are you just getting involved in noise and just being busy versus signal? Are you blocking time to work on the biggest issues in the business? But then also, are you producing enough data and context as a business, which could be seen as noise? But if you're compressing that into artifacts and SOPs and takeaways that are then basically, and that's almost the best use of AI, isn't it? It's to basically turn all of this noise and all this data into something usable that's then leveraged for the business going forward, which is only going to help you with scale and velocity.
The best example of that, and probably the simplest, the most effective thing that I've done recently, is we have a customer facing AI tool that has access now to everyone's personal email, to every recording that we've ever done, to our live chat support, to our phone calls that are coming in. It's got permissions in a way that it won't leak your personal emails to the rest, unless they're attached to a prospect or a customer. So any comms that you have with a customer, even in a private email, is now out in the ether. And I have set up a very simple job in the platform, that's the term for an automation, that simply says, based on every piece of communication that has happened over the last 24 hours, give me 5 wins and 5 areas that I need to be across, issues or risks. And so I get that delivered in my inbox every morning, and I immediately am seeing things that I just never would have heard. I never would have heard this big complaint that's coming from a customer because someone was too embarrassed to raise it. I never would have realized that we're actually doing great work in the development team in this area, and there was a massive win there. And so that, in my mind, is one of the biggest wins for signal over noise. It's because it's taking in everything, and it's highlighting to me what are the most important things. It's not relying on someone deciding that information was important. The AI knows better. The AI knows what I want, and it knows all.
Mate, I don't think there's anything to add. I reckon we've spent whatever time we've spent. There is so much to get out of that. I also reckon you're on. I reckon you are on at the moment. You seem dialed in. So I reckon
talk about AI.
But it's no, I don't think I've got anything to add there. I think that's an excellent way to wrap up what we've gone through today, and hopefully there's a bit in there for everyone. I think obviously hopefully during the week as well, we'll probably try and get this into some some really easy takeaways for people to say, yep, that's condensed that whole show into one action for me for this week. I reckon there's a fair bit there, but I reckon I also might get a couple of those little nuggets from you myself and torture my team a little bit more.
Love it.
Awesome, mate. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks, Scotty. See ya.